Welcome back to my channel. Now I'm doing an interesting job here. Part of extensions and conversions involves a lot of alteration works. This timber frame building, built in the sort of late 80s, is by a company called Scandia House, who are still working these days, producing really nice buildings. And it's been so interesting peeling back the layers, looking at the level of insulation that they achieved, the installation that they did, how they put the thing together, and the windows that they use. So part of what I have to do now is remove these three windows behind me and stud it out basically, because it becomes a wall between two rooms. And then I'm going to create a long sort of floor to ceiling window at one end, which is going to give some borrowed light into the other room. So it's quite a contemporary looking feel. So I've got all the gear here. I've got my timber, which has been delivered, drying out. It was a little bit on the wet side. Chop saw, I'm going to be using a recip saw, and basically taking these out and studding them across. And as that room's habitable on the other side, I'm going to do a section and move on, because we've got these structural posts here and here. So it's a matter of taking the windows out, getting them out of the way, studding it through, plasterboarding a section and moving on. It's a manageable amount of work because we are exposed here. We've got no windows in the new part of the extension, and it's just a way of going about it. So I just thought it was interesting to look at some of this sort of construction, because it was very modern and efficient in its day. So here are a couple of the existing windows that are remaining, and they're softwood and triple glazed, and they've got like stormproof sashes, so they're twice rebated, and they've got all kinds of gaskets in them, so they're really efficient. Also the gaskets, they are best part of 30 years old, and they've not broken down, which means that there's no moisture got in and broken down the unit. So they've actually stood the test of time too. They then build them on the actual timber frame side, and quite often they come in the panels ready, so the panels are stood up. So here's our modern timber frame, and obviously unglazed, so we put the panels up and put the windows in afterwards. But these are a system which probably came in at the time, built into the frame, stood up, and then obviously the brick skin on the outside has been put in as, you know, like the finish to make it look like a traditional build. So let me have a little look inside. Here's one of the windows that we are going to be taking out and studding across. It's really simple in the sense that we just have to cut, there's 6 fixings, we just have to cut the fixings out down the sides, take off the architraves and the small sublinings on the inside, and basically let the window come out, and then we can stud it in. There's no other work to do. There's they've used all kinds of DPCs everywhere, so that, you know, any of the masonry where it returns on the reveals wasn't in contact, and they also had those brick seals, and they also had integrated a DPC as well. So yeah, very thought about and very well executed. So yeah, I'm going to get on, take all the architrave off the back of these ones in here. Then I'll start taking the first one out, build a bit of stud work. Here's my saw, here's the gear, and basically get on with the work. The architraves are off, which means I can actually cut through now. And even in between the window and the frame, they've stuffed insulation. So instead of using like, you can get something called Compriband, which is a foam which expands. You tape it on the side of a new frame, put it in, and after a few hours it closes the gap, which makes it more airtight, which is really good. But even here, they've actually gone to the trouble of stuffing a really thin insulation all the way through. Again, that's really good quality, isn't it, I think, especially for something which was built way before we were so conscious of insulation and all the rest of it. So I'm going to attempt to unscrew the windows and see if they come out. They've got 6 fixings, they've got 3 aside, which are covered by these small white plastic plugs. So I'm hoping I'll be able to take those out and they'll come out. Now I can see when I look through the gap that each of these fixings has got a metal ferrule like a pipe. So I'm not sure whether that clamps against the opening and then the screw goes through. So it's kind of like, as you turn it one way, it holds the window like wedges, and then you screw it in. So I'm hoping that that will be the case and they'll come out. If not, I'll just put a recip saw straight through the 6 fixings here for speed, and I'll lower it out. Now these windows are quite heavy, so I've got my glass suckers, and what I may have to do is lay a couple of timbers, or fix a couple of timber here laying down that way, and let the window come down onto the timbers and slide it out of the way. We'll just see how we get on. What I've done here is actually just attach a piece of batten into the top corner of the frame, so I can cut the fixings out and it's not going to fall inwards or outwards, because you know what these things are like. You'll take the fixings out and it'll be tight. The next minute it'll fall out. So it's just my insurance policy there, and I can also handle it a bit better from that. Once I've got it loose, I can get it out carefully then. So I've unscrewed them and I've got it restrained here, so it's not really moving. But I think what I need to do is actually cut those ferrules that I showed you. I've also got to take off this metal sill. So this sill's really nice. It was what went over the top of the bricks. It's grooved into the frames and everything came down over the top. So all of the rainwater used to just run away. But because they built the frames back in the reveals, they're a little bit more sheltered than a normal frame. So I've just got to pull this out basically. I'll put my claw hammer here and give it a good pull, and that'll come out. It's actually pinned in, believe it or not. Counterintuitive, but pull that out there. There we go. Can't beat this hammer for taking stuff apart. It's just the business. There we go, look. It's even got a name there, Scandiahus, for Mr. Morton. There you go, Mr. Morton. I love finding things like that. You find a name or an old newspaper with a date on it. It's kind of nostalgic. Right, that should be fairly free now once I get this moving. We're laughing. Excellent, let's get the thing out. Right, it seems pretty free. I think I'm going to get this timber moved and then put a couple of them like this here, fix them onto there, and it gives me a hand basically. So I'm not trying to lower all that weight down on my own. I think that's a sensible idea. So we'll get this moved out of the way. It's nice and dry now, so I can restack it somewhere without worrying about it. Let's put these on here. Good. Right, I have got a glass sucker or two. Let's put this on the window. That's it. Let's see if it gets out of my way. That's more like it. So I'm not doing any lifting here. I'm literally just using the window to come forward. Here we go. I reckon that's actually perfect now. Perfect, that. Happy days. So it was a success in the end. So that's my first frame gone, finished, out, and that enables me to build through here with my stud work. So that is it. So dismantle this, move it out of the way, and get on with my stud work. All right, let's do it. Just a quick note, I'm sorting through the timber not to find a straight one, but to find one that's not straight because I'm cutting it down. It's the first rule of carpentry. Save your straight ones for your full walls. But these are all pretty good. The timber merchant knows me too well. He knows that he needs to send me out some good gear. Not that I complain too much, but just knows that, well, he just knows. So I cut a head plate, I cut a sole plate, and then I cut 2 studs, and I'm going to put some grounds on either side to take the plasterboard. So we'll get them done, get them fixed in, and it's going to be perfect. Get a pencil. I've got an extra long pencil here, so I don't actually lose it. Some ear protection, and away we go. Head and sole plate. We'll get those rattled in. Nail gun. Now I'm using 15mm plasterboard. I'm going to set it flush with the front of the existing wall. And then we'll scrim all the joints and skim the whole wall so there's no cracking in the future. To do that I just need a 15mm block to set the plaster back. So that's my 15mm block, and that's exactly right for the plaster. I use that everywhere to get all the timber, so there's no real measuring, it's just that. Now I'm going to line the sides with some batten here and here. We don't need a full stud, we've got full studs either side. This will hold tighter and shrink less, so there's less chance of cracking. I put a little bit of 11mm ply on the bottom before I put the sole plate on. The reason for that was, if I hadn't, I wouldn't have got 2 studs out of my 3 metre lengths. This way I've actually got it. Well, that's the first one studded out. Let's get some plasterboard on that and then we can move on to the other one. So that's the first one. So window came out, I studded it out. I've put some plasterboard in, some vapor check plasterboard because the whole place has got a vapor barrier on. So the simplest thing is to just put a vapor check on. The thing is though, it's an internal wall now, so it won't have the same kind of issues as before with an external wall where you do need to make sure you incorporate that vapor layout where you need it. But what the hell, we'll just put some vapor check plasterboard on. So now I'm going to do the next one, get that one out, stud it up, put the plasterboard on, and then I'll put the sound insulation in those areas, and then it will come to this one where I'm going to be doing the other window. But for that, I'll show you that in another video, how it looks. But for now, that's basically how I tackle a very simple alteration of removing a window, studding in the opening, and eventually I'll be putting a stud wall all the way through the front.